For the very first super middleweight undisputed world championship, it's Canelo Alvarez versus Caleb Plant.
November 6th, you will hear the words, and the new undisputed super middleweight, and still undefeated. You think that's funny? Yeah? You keep laughing, motherfucker, because you know when you're going to find out? Real soon.
I just gonna say something. You're not on my level, and you will see. I promise you.
They have this very aggressive face-off that leads to blows.
And I love that Caleb Plant is going after him.
See you November 6th. You wanna see something special.
I haven't seen anyone this confident come at Canelo.
I'm gonna knock out this guy. Less than 8 rounds. Easy.
Well, there are two numbers to remember. 168, that's the pounds, the weight class at which Canelo Alvarez and Caleb Plant will meet. And 17, that's how many days away the fight is from today. Hello, everyone. My name is Luke Thomas. Along with Brian Campbell, we are your hosts for today's Canelo Alvarez media workout. And Brian, I'm very excited about today. I want to see what Canelo looks like. I can't believe we're just a couple of weeks and some change away. What are you most paying attention to before Canelo enters the ring and hits the mitts today?
You know, you saw that beautiful video package, a little sizzle reel to get us excited for November 6th, only on Showtime pay-per-view when these two finally touch gloves. But Luke, it's the September 22nd press conference, skirmish. Is that the most respectable way to say this? And I think that was important. It took place in Beverly Hills. But for as much as Caleb Plant, your unbeaten IBF champion at 168 pounds, is the underdog coming into this fight, rightfully so, I think he stood up to Canelo in that moment. That set a tone that at the very least, Caleb Plant is coming to fight and coming to seize those 4 title belts. So I think that upped the ante, Luke, and the intensity. Excited to see how Canelo looks. Excited to hear from the champion today, the biggest star in the sport, back on Showtime.
Brian Campbell and I will be with you for the entirety of the workouts, but right now let's go to the man who is in San Diego hosting them. Let's go to Ray Flores.
Thank you very much, Luke and Brian, as we get set to welcome in the WBC, the WBA, and the WBO super middleweight champion of the world with a record of 56 wins, 1 loss, 2 draws, 38 wins coming by way of knockout. From Guadalajara, Jalisco, Mexico, we await the entrance of Saul Canelo Alvarez, the #1 pound-for-pound fighter, as he gets set for his matchup against Caleb Sweet Hands Plant November 6th on Showtime pay-per-view. Canelo, it is great to see you as we get ready for unification coming up on November 6th, 17 days away. How are you feeling heading into this showdown against Caleb Plant, the first time that the super middleweight division will actually be unified in the history of 168 pounds?
No, me siento muy bien, He estado envuelto en muchas peleas muy importantes en mi carrera y me siento bien, me siento listo para seguir haciendo historia.
He said, I feel good, I am very excited, and I want to continue moving forward to make history. Now, Saul, I want to know from you, this is the most that we've seen out of your, in terms of emotional and bad blood between you and an opponent. Do you feel that way? ¿Sientas que tienes sangre, mala contra tu oponente en Caleb Plant?
Creo que sí, nunca he estado envuelto en nada similar antes en mi carrera. Creo que sí es más personal que nunca había estado en mi carrera así que es algo nuevo para mí.
He said, this is new for me. I've never had as much bad blood between an opponent than this one. This is something very different. But yes, this is the most animosity that I've had heading into a big prize fight. When it comes to his style, do you believe, you told Luke Thomas and Brian Campbell that you are going to knock out Caleb Plant before the 8th round? Are you sticking with that prediction?
Sí, yo pienso lo mismo. Creo que se va a dificultar un poco los primeros asaltos, pero por ahí entre el 7, 8, 9 es donde voy a estar, yo creo que noqueándolo.
He said, yes, I'm going to stick with that prediction. He feels that the first couple rounds are going to be difficult, but then, as the fight progresses, 7, 8, 9, I think I am going to be able to get him out of there. And for you, what message do you want to send to Caleb Plant as we are 17 days away until you guys collide for all the bouts at 168 pounds on Showtime Pay-Per-View in Las Vegas?
No, ningún mensaje. Creo que ya le mandé el mensaje que tenía que mandarle. No necesito mandarle más y simplemente que esté listo porque viene algo nuevo para él el 6 de noviembre.
He said, look, I already went ahead and I gave him the message, when we had the press conference and stuff. So I don't need to tell him anything else. I'm just prepared and ready to go for November 6th. Well, Saul, we will let you go ahead and train. We're going to watch you train, and we look forward to your matchup in 17 days on Showtime Pay-Per-View.
Gracias.
Saul Canelo Alvarez as he gets ready for November 6th, 17 days away. Well, Luke and Brian, he went ahead and stuck with his prediction that he told you after the press conference. He believes that the first couple rounds are going to be difficult. Then 7, 8, 9, he's going to be able to get Caleb Plant out of there, thus unifying the super middleweight division.
BC, you're a big believer in Caleb Plant, or at least relative to some of the other challenges he's had. What do you make of the bold prediction from Canelo Alvarez there?
Well, I think it comes down to that dilemma. If you're going to poke the bear, right, you got to be prepared for what comes out of him. And I think although Canelo Alvarez was as cool as a cucumber there, I mean, Luke, walking into the gym to chat with our fella Ray Flo over here wearing, I don't know, those slick pajamas, silk. Either way, membership as the biggest star in the sport have its privileges. But I think, although Canelo's cool and calm, that got to him. Caleb Plant getting in his face, bringing up the accusations of performance-enhancing drug use from Canelo and his extended team, really trying to send a message. The message was received from Canelo, so I think that is going to be very interesting. That moment, that press conference, September 22nd, how much does that influence all of the events we see until fight night, the interviews, the face-offs, and then obviously inside the ring there. I think Ray captured it nicely there. Canelo is all business now, but it's business with a purpose.
Ray, you've been covering this game a long time. BC and I were watching that presser live. We couldn't believe some of the reactions from Canelo. In all of your time covering Canelo, have you seen maybe the Demetrius Andrade where he jumped into the press conference and he was sort of having words with Canelo? But short of that, have you ever seen a time when Canelo was that angry with an opponent?
No, Luke, never liked this, and that's why I went ahead and asked him if this is the most animosity he's ever had, because with Andrade, it was more that he was having fun with him and sort of like, look, you pose no threat to me whatsoever. With Caleb Plant, there was genuine bad blood between the two. I've never seen Canelo so emotional and agitated and just sort of disturbed by the accusations and, the gamesmanship that Caleb Plant has been throwing at him. We saw a different level of Canelo. We saw not a violent Canelo Alvarez. We saw Canelo Alvarez that's like, this is my line, you have crossed it, and I'm going to push back at you. Typically, we see that with Canelo in fights because, look, he's all about business. But this is the most emotional we've ever seen Canelo Alvarez. But as I watched him come into the gym, he's calm, cool, collected. He knows he has business to handle, but I think it gives him a little extra oomph and a little extra more motivation to train even harder because of the fact that Caleb Plant and him do have that bad blood between each other.
All right, Ray, we know you got work to do. We will talk to you later. There's going to be ringside interviews and everything else. So let's thank Ray. We'll talk to him in just a bit. BC, you and I here for a moment. Help me understand, BC. Let's say I wanted to play devil's advocate. Why is the Caleb situation, as you have presented it, in terms of the animosity, how is that meaningfully different than some of the bad blood that he had with either Triple G in the first or second fights?
Triple G, the feud was similar heading into that second fight because Canelo Alvarez did have that suspension for the failed drug test, for the tainted meat, for, he had his justification after that. Gennady Golovkin didn't believe that. And he came after him verbally. And I think what you saw, though, this is why we reference back to that original question of, Caleb Plant, you do have to be wary of poking that bear as much as maybe that might play into Caleb's style as the matador, as the true boxer, is what did Canelo do in that second fight with Gennady Golovkin? He walked down the bigger puncher, stood in front of him, took the shots, gave back even better, and won a very close decision and just an absolute thriller of a classic title slugfest. Is Caleb Plant on Gennady Golovkin's level? Probably not comparatively apples for apples. He is an elite boxer, so you do wonder if this is a backfiring role potentially. I think either way, it adds fireworks to this fight, and it lets Canelo know this, Luke. Whether or not it truly matters, look, he's the pound-for-pound king. He's the sport's biggest star. Everybody's gunning for Canelo. Every time he enters the ring, it's his opponent's biggest payday and usually their biggest opportunity for glory, fights, world titles, all that. He's used to people stepping up, but he hasn't really had an opponent, save for those comments from Triple G, who's really getting in his face, who's really saying, no, I'm coming for this. I'm not going to win this accidentally. I'm coming to take the titles from you, to seize it from you. Look, whether you believe in the threat that Plant brings, I think Canelo heard that message. And even though he can be cool, he can predict a KO, he's going into that gym and he's working extra hard, Luke, because he knows somebody's coming for it. And there is a difference at the highest level. It may sound dumb, may sound stupid. Hey, everybody's coming in there with a puncher's chance. Everybody wants to win. Not everybody's willing to go for it. And I think at the very least from Caleb Plant ahead of this, he's showing us that this is his moment. He's ready for it. So it's another wrinkle, Luke, in the challenge of what was already going to be an interesting style contrast between these two come November 6th.
He's not backing down. He upped the ante to begin with and then stuck with it here by being interviewed there by Ray Flores and saying he's going to get him out there pretty quick. Would that be shocking if he did? Like, I mean, winning, no. I think the odds makers expect Canelo to win. I think in talking to various experts, they mostly expect Canelo to win. But to win in the way in which he's describing, it's not like stoppages are somehow a thing he hasn't done. In his last fight against Billy Joe Saunders, he not just broke it, shattered the eye socket of the man with one single shot, it appeared. So he's capable of big power. He's been a big power puncher even at 168, which has been a little surprising, I think I can say that. The extent to which he's been a puncher at 168 has been something of a revelation, I would argue. If he gets him out of there, Brian, in your mind, in the way in which he said he would do it, it would be impressive. What would that do for shaping the narrative about Canelo's future and maybe the status he occupies, even already being pound for pound number one?
Yeah, I mean, it would only cement everything that we know about him and say about him. But, when you see it firsthand, you're going to get a lot of extra eyes tuning into this pay-per-view November 6th because of the bad blood between them. You're also going to get a great set of eyes there for the history to see the first time in this division, super middleweight, all four titles coming together in this modern era. When you get a platform and an opportunity that large, and look, every time Canelo fights, it tends to be that large, and you deliver like that, it's not that it's out of Canelo's game plan or capabilities to knock a guy out early or to make a pointed effort to do so. It's just that he's so particular as a counterpuncher, as a completely well-rounded fighter who will work the body to wear you down, will look for that perfect counter shot to try to get you out of there. You don't tend to see Canelo going after it as much early because he can do all things. He can take on all styles. So to your question, could the bad blood fuel a potential climactic moment for Canelo? It would certainly look very well and really double down on all the things we say about him in this rare sort of coming together of being the sport's biggest star. And oh, by the way, also, without question, its best competitor. We haven't seen that come together like that since Floyd Mayweather's run.
I'd be curious to know what you're expecting here today from the media workout. On the one hand, I am very curious to see what kind of shape Canelo was in. Again, we're only 17 days away. That is not far at all. I want to see what kind of shape he's in. I kind of want to see how he moves and sort of what shot selection that they're focusing on for the focus mitts and then the pads and everything else. But BC, you know this as well as I do. They're not going to show their full cards to the media even a little bit. Obviously, some of this is pageantry and some of this is for media exposure. Are you looking for anything from a single training session for the media here in particular, or is that asking a bit too much?
We do come here looking for those clues, and I think we look for it in press conferences. We look for it in face-offs. Anything that gives us some type of edge, an idea of who's more confident, who's going to win this fight. What can we actually gain from this? It can be dependent upon the user and how much a fighter's willing to put forth in front of the cameras. But I think, Luke, as it plays into this style matchup, it is just a very interesting fight to begin with. Caleb Plant's never lost before as the unbeaten IBF champion. And you and I have talked about it on Morning Combat so much ahead of this fight and saying, look, Canelo's a big favorite. He's a big star, all those things. Should he win? Is he expected to win? Vegas will tell you yes. But Caleb Plant can move. He can box. He's got quick feet. He's got quick hands. You really want to see, is Canelo going to alter his style at all to reflect that? Or is it going to be the Canelo coming in well-rounded, looking to do? I mean, look, you and I have had the benefit and it's a clip that'll be coming to the Morning Combat YouTube channel ahead of this fight, doing a resume review on Canelo's journey to get here. And I think you were so apt in saying, we never guessed if he ever moved up to 168 pounds. Would he be the same fighter? Could he carry the same power? It is interesting fight to fight that Canelo has been the boxer when he's needed to. He's been the counterpuncher. He's been the stalker, and he's gotten guys out of there. So if we can gain anything from what we see today in the ring, attitude, look, feel, about what style he's going to bring in there against the pure boxer, an aggressive pure boxer, but a slick boxer in Caleb Plant, that's going to be interesting to see. How does he deal with that one major skill set across from him that could give him trouble? And that's the speed when you mix it with the smarts and the IQ of a pure boxer. We got a little hint of that, Luke, in the last fight for Canelo Alvarez, when he unified super middleweight titles against Billy Joe Saunders. You mentioned that sort of half uppercut hook, which really turned the fight around, the fortunes for Billy Joe, and broke his face, and it wasn't long after that until he was gone. But before that, you saw that feeling out process. This is why Canelo's great. If you're going to be an Erislandy Lara, an Austin Trout, and you're going to bring a chess match to him, he'll figure it out. He'll find the openings. He'll play chess with you. It just may take him a little bit of time.
Although in the cases he did drop Trout in the 7th, so that you can count that. Obviously, Lara was a difficult fight, and you could even bring in the Danny Jacobs fight as well, was one he had to kind of craft his way through, is the way I would kind of describe that, but that one wasn't nearly as action-packed. This is what's so interesting about this fight, BC. We know Canelo can thump at this weight class, so if he wants to be the puncher here, he can be, but we know he can box either on the front foot or the back foot, depending on the posture of his opponent. We should also not forget, BC, that Caleb Plant seems agitated too. He seems like he is matching the intensity of Canelo, maybe even kind of setting the tone that Canelo himself is matching. It's not really one guy who's possessed to win here. It's two, but that contradiction is the one that kind of gets me a little bit between how cerebral it's going to be and then how much of a duking it out it's going to be kind of separately. All right, we'll put a pin in that conversation, BC. We'll come back to it. For now, let's go back down to the ring in San Diego with Ray Flores standing by. Canelo's about to get ready.
Thank you very much, Luke and Brian. Well, yes, we are here at the gym of the WBC, WBA, and WBO super middleweight champion of the world. Behind me, Canelo Alvarez, stretching out, getting himself all set and ready to go. He's focused, he's determined, and he's looking to make history on November 6th on Showtime pay-per-view, just 17 days away. It will be an electric atmosphere at the MGM Grand Garden Arena in Las Vegas as Canelo takes on the IBF super middleweight champion of the world, Caleb Plant. All the belts on the line at 168 pounds. It's a beautiful gym here led by Eddie Reynoso, who is a mastermind when it comes to strategizing and helping to train world-class prize fighters. And as we all know, the number one pound-for-pound kingpin is in the ring, Canelo Alvarez. It is unbelievable that he hasn't fought in Las Vegas in nearly 2 years, but he's very active. This is his 4th fight in a year's time. He started off his quest in December, and now this is his 4th fight. And he's always said he wants unification. I actually asked one of the members of his team if he's ever had unification. No, he's not. So for Canelo Alvarez, this is another layer to his illustrious prize fighting career. 56-1-2 with 38 knockouts. He's been fighting for nearly half his life, which is absolutely mesmerizing. But he's very focused, and I think, guys, that it is so telling that this is the most animosity that he's ever had with anybody that he's fought. How will that translate on November 6th? I can't wait to find out as we see Canelo is stretching out and getting himself all set and ready to go. The pride and joy of Guadalajara, Jalisco, Mexico. He is without a doubt the consensus number one pound-for-pound fighter as he's gone up various divisions, but now settling in here to 168 pounds. And I know that he's extremely focused on Caleb Plant, but I find it to be very interesting that he told Brian Custer during his Last Stand podcast that assuming he's able to get past Caleb Plant, when Brian Custer told him, who do you want to fight next? Would it be David Benavidez or Jermall Charlo? He goes, I would like to fight Jermall Charlo, which I think would be a very compelling matchup. But anybody that Canelo fights is must-see TV. And it all comes your way on Saturday, November 6th from the MGM Grand Garden Arena in Las Vegas on Showtime pay-per-view. A big night of boxing with Canelo Alvarez in our main event against Caleb Plant. You do not want to miss it. Canelo stretching out and getting himself prepared. We are just 17 days away from the fight, nearing the conclusion of training camp here in San Diego for Canelo. And then we will have fight week, and Showtime will have fight week covered from top to bottom all week long. What a fall and winter for Showtime Championship Boxing. And talking with the members of Canelo's team, there is a confidence, but there's also a focus because they know that history is on the line. And Brian and Lucas, Canelo continues to stretch and get ready to go. I'll tell you what, there is a confidence, there is a relaxed and poised demeanor, but the entire focus is to make history undisputed on November 6th on Showtime pay-per-view against Caleb Plant.
No doubt about it. And again, remember what he told Caleb Plant, you're not on my level, and you're going to find that out. That cold, calm, but focused demeanor, as you indicated, you can see it on display, and he's going to have that to live up to the words about Caleb Plant not being on his level. Also, this is quite the warm-up with the stretching. Full routine, but when you're the world's best boxer, you have to get the whole comprehensive, regimen in there as well. BC, speaking about the focus of Canelo, I've never really seen him all that unfocused for the most part. How do we know, in your mind, whether there's another level to it?
That's a great question. I mean, really, one of the calling cards of Canelo's long-term success, and when you do the project we did, looking at the 10 key fights of his career that got him to this point, you realize how long he's been doing this, turned pro at 15, but how long he's been doing this at a super elite level with the spotlight on him. Look, when you come up as a poor young Mexican boy with the matinee idol looks and the red hair and the freckles, you're going to get some attention. The youngest of 7 brothers, all professional boxers. But what we quickly learned about Canelo is he can't be shaken. I mean, how many times do people reference the one time Jose Miguel Cotto hit him with a left hook more than a decade ago, and we saw him have to take a sidestep, recalibrate himself, and come back in? Since that moment, you don't see Canelo wobbly, getting rocked. You don't see him mentally unfocused if somebody gets in his face. You don't see him nervous in the big stage. I think one of the key victories of Canelo Alvarez's great career may have come in how he responded to his lone defeat. Yes, he's been in so many great close fights, but the one that he lost and lost clearly against Floyd Mayweather in their pay-per-view blockbuster in 2013, he was, Luke, a term you like to say, audited in that fight. He was young, just 23, against the 36-year-old legend, the TBE, the great Hall of Famer in Mayweather. But what he did in response to that, it acted like it was a hiccup that was never there. Canelo got right back on board, went on to unify titles again at 154, unified them at 60, 68, won a title at 175, which blew us away, and now for the first time looking to become the undisputed champion of a single division. It's that mental toughness and focus that doesn't maybe get talked about enough of what makes him so great.
Yeah, it seems to me like he's able to dial it up fight to fight all the time, and if you just do that consistently, you become the sum of your habits. It sort of pays dividends later in your career, which he's not in some kind of senior stage or anything, but he is in an advanced stage, I think you could say. Any case, Ray, what do you when you examine this matchup, aside from the animosity, right? Let's put that aside for just a second. You know Caleb Plant in his career. What do you see as Caleb Plant's biggest weapon or maybe even advantage?
He has to be able to use his athleticism and his boxing IQ to try to find a way to frustrate Canelo. But with all that being said, the bottom line when it comes to fighting Canelo at any point is you have to gain his respect. And how do you do that? Because you have to land something significant early. If you cannot find a way to keep him at bay, he will find a way to cut off that ring and not just make it a half of a ring. We've seen Canelo cut it off to being a quarter of a ring for his opponents, and that is dangerous territory. So for Plant, he must use his athleticism. He must use his high boxing IQ. But at the end of the day, the biggest key for Caleb Plant or for anybody fighting Canelo is you have to land something significant early, because if you don't, it's going to be a long night at the office for you. And look, some guys have tried to do that, but at the end of the day, I mean, one thing about the one blemish that you were talking about when it comes to Floyd Mayweather, that was back in September of 2013, is the fact that Floyd landed a heavy right hand on Canelo, and that made Canelo think a little bit. It created doubt in his mind. Now, granted, Canelo was still 21 years of age and was new to that kind of stage. But since that time, Canelo, guys, even in his 30s, is a young veteran. He's been there, done that. He relishes this kind of stage, and this is nothing new to him.
Ray,
no doubt about it. Go ahead, BC.
Excuse me, Luke. Yeah, Ray, we talk about, like, there's so many titles in the game today. So somebody's an undisputed champion, but they're not, a unified champion, but not undisputed. It can get confusing for even the hardcore boxing fan. But where I praise Canelo for his willingness to go after all four belts, regardless of who's wearing them, is because that's old school. That's what the fighters of generation before built their name upon. You grew up in Chicago, and having known you, Ray, the son of a boxing fan who loved watching Julio Cesar Chavez Sr. fights, as did so many great Mexican-American boxing fans. How close do you think Canelo is getting with all these world titles in different divisions to taking over that spot in the heart of the Mexican fan base of who their number one is?
Fair fight territory, but I'll tell you this, the fact that Canelo still has a lengthy career in front of him, what Canelo is doing for the younger generation is exactly what you pointed out. That's what Chavez Sr. meant to me, being a young Mexican-American growing up in the Chicagoland area. And Canelo is that guy for Mexican fight fans all over the world, not just in Mexico and the United States, but all over the world. That is what he means to fight fans, to Mexican fight fans, no matter where they are. Canelo is getting close, guys, and I never thought in my wildest imagination that anyone would be able to touch Julio Cesar Chavez. Canelo is getting closer, and the more accomplishments he gets, the further he progresses along his career, he gets closer to that rarefied territory. And guys, I am standing by with the esteemed trainer of Canelo Alvarez, Eddie Reynoso. Eddie, thank you so much for your time. Tell us, how is Saul feeling as he heads into his fight against Caleb Plant? ¿Cómo Saul siente para pelear contra Caleb Plant el 6 de noviembre?
Buenos días a todos los que nos están viendo. Pues muy bien, estamos muy motivados, ya casi listos. La verdad estamos muy emocionados por esta pelea, que ya se llegue, y nos preparamos bastante bien para ganar la pelea.
You said we are very focused, we're very emotional as we head closer to this fight. We're anxious, but in a good way, as we head towards November 6th. Is there genuine bad blood between Canelo and Caleb Plant? ¿Hay sangre mala contra Canelo y Caleb Plant?
No, nosotros no tenemos sangre mala, lo único que queremos es ganar la pelea, seguir haciendo historia, seguir avanzando en el boxeo y dejar un nombre importante para todos los mexicanos aquí en Estados Unidos.
He said, no, there is no bad blood. We're just focused on making history. And at the end of the day, we want to be able to continue to build the name so that all Mexicans around the world can go ahead and galvanize behind Canelo Alvarez. What do you think is the key to victory on November 6th against Caleb Plant? ¿Qué sientas que es la llave de la victoria contra Caleb Plant?
Pues la llave de la victoria es presionar, salir desde el primer round a buscar conectar a Caleb Plant. Es un boxeador que tiene mucha técnica, tiene mucha habilidad de piernas, tiene muy buen manejo de distancia, pero vamos a hacer todo lo que hemos estado haciendo en el gimnasio, y más que nada la experiencia y la fortaleza de Saúl son las que van a ser la clave para ganar.
I think that the experience and the heart that Saul has is going to be our key to victory. But at the end of the day, from the first round on, we got to go out and find him. Caleb Plant is a very good technical fighter. He has good legs. He has a high ring IQ. But our focus is we have to pressure him from the start of the fight moving onward. What would this victory to unify this division mean to Canelo and your entire team? Si Canelo va a ganar la pelea contra Caleb Plant, haciendo la historia, ganando los 4 títulos aquí en 168 libras, ¿qué es la significa para Saúl y para ti y este gimnasio?
Creo que es lo más importante que vamos a conseguir. ganando esa pelea creo que Saúl quedaría en un lugar que sería muy complicado que lo igualaran, y más que nada dejar en claro que el boxeo de México es el mejor, y ganando esa pelea creo que vamos a dejar el boxeo mexicano en un lugar muy especial, más de lo que ya está.
He said our focus is to make sure that we show everyone that Mexican boxing is number one. And we feel that if we're able to get this victory and unify the division, that we can go ahead and put our mark and really show the world that Mexican boxing is number one. Have you thought about the emotions, in terms of if you're able to win this fight, how would you feel, knowing that you guys accomplished all 4 belts? And is this the most important fight in the career of Canelo Alvarez? ¿Esto es la más importante pelea en la carrera de Canelo Alvarez?
Sí, es la más importante. ¿Por qué? Porque estamos jugando todo el prestigio de un boxeador. Lo más grande que pueda conseguir un boxeador es ser un campeón indiscutible, un campeón que tenga todos los cinturones, y creo que esa es la pelea más importante, y por eso nos hemos preparado bastante bien para salir con la mano en alto.
This is the most important fight in the career of Canelo Alvarez, because the goal is to win all 4 belts. And as a prize fighter, there is nothing bigger than unifying a division. That's why we've been working so hard. So yes, if we're able to win this fight, and as we prepare for this fight, that's why we've been preparing so hard for Caleb Plant to unify the division. Final question, última pregunta. What do you want to tell Caleb Plant? ¿Qué la mensaje que tienes para Caleb Plant?
Que le vamos a ganar. Ese es el único mensaje. No tengo nada que decir, solamente que nosotros vamos a ganar la pelea.
Said, I have really nothing to say. The only thing I could tell him is we're going to win the fight on November 6th. Eddie, mucho gusto. Gracias.
Gracias a ustedes.
Eddie Reynoso joining us here, guys. And Eddie, the fact that Brian and Luke, that Eddie told us that this is the most significant fight in the career of Canelo Alvarez, with the fights against Floyd, with the fights that he's had, the illustrious fights, I think that speaks volumes as to how significant November 6th on Showtime pay-per-view truly is for Canelo.
No doubt about it. Thanks, Ray. We'll be back with you a little bit later. For right now, to answer the question and to make a point here, Brian, Ray is right. For Eddie Reynoso to say that, I mean, partly, yeah, they're promoting a fight. They want folks to tune in. I get that. But at the same time, with the fiery intensity, with the press conference, with the fact that no one in boxing has fully undisputed, unified all 4 belts at 168 pounds. If Canelo does, he'd be the first. And again, being the bigger puncher in this weight class, which has been utterly phenomenal to watch. Brian, I don't think it's necessarily hyperbole to say, even from a sort of the understandably but myopic view that coaches might have and fighters as well, that this is the biggest fight. Is it promotionally on the same par of bringing in what Mayweather brings? I don't think Caleb Plant necessarily brings that, but it's a huge fight, number one, and secondly, the overall history implications, I should say, they are quite significant.
Yeah, look, anytime you get history, bad blood, and a really interesting style matchup involved on a very large platform, it's going to feel big. It's going to matter. I think also that's another part of, Canelo's consistent success, and to be on top of this sport for so long, to immediately, when we transitioned out of the Mayweather-Pacquiao era, so to speak, of this sport, Canelo was ready, willing, and able to take that baton instantly and make this era his own. And I think a big part of that is making every fight matter on this level to him. It just so happened this time it got a little bit personal, and that helped. But Luke, you see Eddie Reynoso right there. You and I can't say enough, as most of the boxing public, great things about who he's become as trainer and co-manager of Alvarez, and how he's helped this really incredible evolution from being more of a plodding counterpuncher at 154 pounds to being, as we talked about, a complete fighter now who can beat you anyway. And what's crazy, especially when you and I look back at some of his recent big fights at 168 or 175 pounds, how Canelo has adapted to become the stalker in some of these matchups. How he did that against a supposedly bigger puncher in Sergey Kovalev blows me away. A lot of that is the brain trust of Eddie Reynoso, who not only has been getting the big name attention with Canelo, but now with Oscar Valdez, with Ryan Garcia, with Andy Ruiz Jr. it's hard to just go out on a limb and say this guy's the best trainer in boxing, but he's certainly the hottest trainer and the trainer of the moment. Luke, what do you sort of get from him, whether it's technique, style, or even demeanor, that you think makes this a perfect marriage for Canelo?
Yeah, well, one is you use the right word, marriage. I mean, you and I know this from covering the sports for combat sports for so long, which is that the best kind of fighters typically have not just great coaches, but really meaningful, impactful, often lasting relationships with those coaches, right? Sometimes you can get a situation where a Tyson Fury can leave Ben Davison and, go the whole Kronk direction, change up things and get an even more dominant win. That does happen. But what you more commonly see among the very, very best, I should say, are situations like this, where they connect and then they just stick together for a pretty long time. Sometimes a matter of 5 to 10 years. Sometimes the entirety of the fighter's professional relationship. So one is they've got a great bond, and I don't mean that in some kind of flippant or almost irrelevant way. When you've got a good bond like that, that means you have trust in your coach. That means the coach has trust in the fighter. It means if things get bad, he will listen to the coach. It means that they probably are on the same wavelength in terms of game planning. And I think that some of the additional skills that Canelo has picked up, it's hard to know exactly what to attribute to Eddie Reynoso, but I'll just say in the last few years, what I've seen is one, that stalking you're talking about. I think Eddie discovered this guy. It's like, dude, if you can punch like this, why are you doing it backing up? The big part is putting opponents on their heels. They fight differently, especially if you're going to go up weight classes and they have bigger reach. Getting them along the rope line is absolutely a key component of any kind of success, especially if you can punch with them. And I think more than that, dude, we talked about this a lot. I think Canelo is one of the better guys in the entire sport of turning offense into defense and defense into offense. They just weave together, where he's not fighting offensively at times and then defensively at times. He might have some kind of orientation one direction or the other, depending on the round or the moment. But in general, he's able to just weave them together. Even in the moment, for example, in the last fight, when he broke the face of Billy Joe Saunders, this was a portion of the fight, at least in the rounds or two previous to that point, that Billy Joe was kind of having a little bit of momentum. If you scored the fight, you scored it for Billy Joe closer to that moment, the rounds that preceded it. But he's able, even when the opponent tactically changes, he can make the adjustments. When he's put on the back foot, he can still fight. And then when he obviously wants to move forward, he can. To me, a big reason why he's able to do that is because he doesn't necessarily have to worry about what gear he's in. He can kind of flow between the states pretty easily. And I think it's obviously a testament to the hard work and skill of a guy like Canelo Alvarez, but it also seems to me the molding from Eddie Reynoso, Brian. I don't know, can you really say, do you get this version of him, Canelo, without Eddie being in his life as long as he has? I'm skeptical of that.
And that's why it's hard to sort of break down the percentages of what comes from the fighter and his own skills and knowledge and growth, and what is, due to the coaching, because he's been with the Reynosos, not just Eddie, but his father, Jose Chepo Reynoso, as not just, trainers from his amateur days, but father and brotherly figures to him as they've, traveled the world on this boxing journey. So just a remarkable career. It's funny. I mean, Canelo's just 31 years old, but because he turned pro as a teenager and because we've seen him on top for so long, it could either go both ways. You can be like, wow, he's been around forever, or you start not to necessarily think of him as a veteran in the, entering the second half of his prime. But that's certainly where we're at. Titles across 4 divisions, just a remarkable journey to get here, and that's due to that consistency, that work ethic. I mean, Luke, you've seen the sort of marketing look from Canelo with the boxing is no life, boxing is life. And, on one hand, you can sort of heckle the simplicity of that, but, he's an old school Spartan. He lives this thing, and that's a great deal of why he's had this success. I just cannot believe, and I don't think there's enough times we can say it, Luke, him making the jump from 154 to middleweight, to super middleweight, to light heavyweight, and to carry his power, speed, and be the more dangerous fighter every single time. I mean, there's a little bit of comparison in that to what Manny Pacquiao did in rising up in weight. Only the very true special ones can sort of act as if weight is nothing more than, a number you hit on the scale. They're the same fighter regardless.
Let's go back to Ray Flores in San Diego, who is standing by with Canelo's strength and conditioning coach.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Luke and Brian. We are here with Munir Samoya. Munir, thank you very much for joining us. Tell us, how, in your opinion, how is Canelo looking? ¿Cómo se ve Canelo? Estamos preparando para el 6 de noviembre contra Caleb Plant.
Pues la verdad se ve en forma, se ve fuerte. Su condición, todo se ve al 100, la verdad.
He looks in form, he looks fit, and his conditioning is second to none. Have you been doing anything different as you guys prepare Canelo for Caleb Plant? ¿Están haciendo algo diferente con Canelo? ¿Están preparando contra Caleb Plant porque Caleb Plant es muy atlético en el cuadrilátero? Caleb Plant's very athletic in the ring?
Sí, fíjate, bueno, yo me baso a lo que Eddie ve en Caleb Plant y me dice la forma en cómo trabajarlo ahí en los ejercicios de acondicionamiento, por ejemplo. Quiere un poquito de rapidez, quiere explosividad, fuerza y todo eso.
Yeah, so what happens is Eddie lets me know what he sees in Caleb Plant, and then I alter my workouts for Canelo to prepare for Caleb Plant. So I know we've been working on getting quicker, on being more explosive. So that has been the focus from a strength and conditioning standpoint. At the age of 31 years of age, do you think that Canelo is getting better physically because he seems to be in incredible physical shape? ¿Sientas que Canelo en 31 años que está haciendo más mejor con el físico, en la condición de él peleando contra oponentes como Caleb Plant?
Sí, claro, se ha visto más fuerte. Si vieron pues con la pelea de Callum Smith, de Billy Joe Saunders, se ha visto que está fuerte, es más inteligente, obviamente no desperdicia golpe. Y él se siente más confiado también por el poder que tiene.
Yeah, so Canelo is stronger, he's faster, and he has a lot more confidence when he throws his punches. Also, he doesn't waste much motion. In your eyes, how do you see the fight playing out on November 6th? ¿Cómo sientas que la pelea va a estar contra Canelo y Caleb Plant? ¿Tu predicción para la pelea?
Pues nosotros como equipo sabemos cómo es Saúl. Obviamente estamos confiados porque sabemos de su capacidad. Entonces, la verdad estamos tranquilos, esperando ya el 6 de noviembre.
He goes, we're relaxed, we're totally confident. We know what Canelo can do, and we're just awaiting November 6th. But you don't have a prediction, no tienes una predicción, porque Canelo has said that he believes he will be able to finish off Caleb Plant in 8 rounds or less. Canelo está diciendo que él se va a terminar a Caleb Plant en 8 asaltos o menos. ¿Sientes que eso va a ser la realidad en el 6 de noviembre?
Pues con Saúl todo es impredecible, ¿no? Igual yo creo que lo va a terminar más o menos como el 7º, 8º round, así es.
Yeah, I think he will. I think Canelo will finish off Caleb Plant or the 7th and 8th round. And look, Canelo is very confident, and when he makes his predictions, likely they come true. So I believe that is the case. Thank you very much for your time, and we look forward to seeing you guys as we head towards fight week.
Thank you so much.
Guys, the strength and conditioning coach at Canelo Alvarez saying, yes, he's working on being quicker, faster, more explosive, and you see indications of that inside the ring as we are here for his workout here in San Diego.
Adelante. Eso ahí. Y suéltale. Así ahí. Ahí. Ahí está. Ahí está. Ahí está. Dobles ahí. Dobles. Vivo ahí. Ahí está. Y salte. Amagas ahí. Eso, dale vuelta. Eso. Ahora ya vea, güey. Sale y ya vea.
Luke Thomas, Brian Campbell here. We're the hosts of Morning Combat. You can check us out at youtube.com/Morning Combat. But today we are here for the Canelo Alvarez workout. And as you can see, here he is with the Fanoodles, basically, with trainer Eddie Reynoso working in the ring. BC?
Luke,
it's amazing. One real quick thing, if I may, BC. It's kind of amazing that not that he's exactly working super hard, but he hasn't even broken a sweat wearing 2 shirts, jumping rope, and now practicing with trainer Eddie Reynoso. Kind of remarkable, actually.
Yeah, this is light work for the cameras. Get your pictures. Looking good, looking good. One thing, though, Luke, you always wonder if you can pull a little tidbit out of what we're seeing Canelo go to the southpaw stance in his warm-ups a little bit, something you don't typically see from him in the ring, always in that orthodox stance. He was going from southpaw, practicing his body work, switching up his footwork. Will we see that against Caleb Plant? It's hard to know. But one thing I did want to take away, I thought, was prescient from that interview with the strength and conditioning coach, is he really identified to Ray how efficient Canelo is. And Luke, that is just such a true sign of how elite he is. When he can be the bigger puncher in these fights or the counter puncher like he was more of in his junior middleweight reign, yet his CompuBox stats and the percentages still being so high. Canelo doesn't waste punches, so he's a hard fighter to counter against because he doesn't put himself in bad positions. And I think even more, Luke, on the standpoint of not wasting punches, remember what he did against unbeaten Callum Smith to unify super middleweight titles. Smith was working behind that high guard, willing to sit on the rope slot to try to buy time. Canelo didn't have, let's say, a pure target, so he just started pounding away at the arms, ended up dislocating the left bicep of Smith during that fight, which essentially took away his hook and jab. Really just next level thinking for Canelo, but really making great use of what he has. When is the last time you see Canelo out of position, off balance? It just doesn't happen.
No, it's a great point. And one thing I sort of wanted to bring up, and you can understand it in strength and conditioning terms as well as technical terms, which is, for example, we can't really tell here because he has a shirt on, but by the time fight time comes, you'll see, like, compared to his fights at 154, his muscle mass is going to be significantly greater, and there's going to be some key reasons for that. Obviously, he's up in weight. That's going to be the biggest one, but he's older. He doesn't get out of shape. I mean, look at the statement in the middle of the ring, no boxing, no life. I'm not saying he's always in camp, but he always lives a life that makes it so that he can gear up for camp quite easily. And you do that for year after year after year, and you begin to build on an existing base of athletic, essentially muscle tissue and muscular mind connection, and all of the motor patterns that he's learned. He can build on that. So by the time he gets to the stage in his career, everything, to your point, BC, very efficient. You're speaking more about boxing skills, but all of it is related. And also with boxing skills, BC, we talked about how he can do sort of all of it. He's got strengths, he's got weaknesses. He's not the perfect fighter. No fighter is. But again, if you start young and you really begin to live this life in a sort of monastic way, which at times I think Canelo Alvarez has, at each stage of your life as you get older, think of it in 5-year increments, 15 to 20, 20 to 25, and so forth, you begin to build on that skill to the point where you have this deep reservoir of things you can go to depending on the opponent. Everything is in your toolbox. Let's bring in Ray here. Ray Flores, who of course is in San Diego and is ringside. What's going on, Ray? What do you see?
Well, what I see is that Canelo is just all about business. I mean, he's going and getting the proper work necessary. But the point that I want to bring up to you guys is when we were talking before I talked with Eddie Reynoso about, of where Canelo's legacy is when it comes to Mexican fighters. To me, what I am seeing out of Canelo that we typically don't see out of Mexican prize fighters is his ability to use feints and head movements and be so intelligent when it comes to his pure boxing skill. The fact that Canelo has transitioned to being a very good technical boxer puncher is something that is just, it's been mesmerizing to watch. His accuracy, the fact that his strength and conditioning coach told me that he doesn't waste much motion, and I've been seeing Canelo get better when it comes to making sure that everything he throws has a purpose, and he doesn't waste much motion, which is why, in my estimation, guys, he has gotten better in the latter rounds. I think that Canelo, over the past year to year and a half, has gotten stronger from round 6 on because of the fact that he doesn't waste much motion and his conditioning continues to get better and better. This guy is in the prime of his career, and I don't want to hear anybody say, oh, well, who's the consensus #1 pound-for-pound fighter? It is without a doubt, hands down, Canelo Alvarez.
Brian, question for you here as I think about this. I'm not saying that Canelo, to Ray's point, he just made, I'm not saying he's redefining what it means to be a Mexican fighter, right? To come forward, somewhat of a brawler type, but always in entertaining affairs and always showing a ton of heart. But what I am, for that to be true, he would have to be inspiring a new generation of fighters to follow in his footsteps. But in terms of what he offers as the leading Mexican fighter in the world, and then the cerebral way that Ray talked about in terms of which he's fighting, obviously there's been many great cerebral Mexican fighters, but it is something, I don't know if new, but a new way to think about it.
No, it is. And you wonder what you tease to, the long-term impact of that. Kids growing up in Mexico, around the world, looking at this superstar and maybe wanting to get into boxing, but even more particular, adopting that style. And what's interesting is Canelo's had to overcome so many sort of stereotypes or labels within the boxing game that can often come to a young fighter who has the look, but you don't really know if they have the game. And I think while it was a harder sell in the beginning for, let's say, the traditional hardcore fans, especially the Mexican-American fans who love him some Chavez, love him some come forward, take 2 to give 1, to see a guy, to Ray's point, so calculated, he was a lot more Juan Manuel Marquez in terms of the clinical way he approached fights than Chavez ever was. And he stayed true to that. And it just so happened that Canelo evolved to become this complete fighter we're talking about. But you wonder if that can sway when you have this much success and you're in the public eye for this long. It can redefine what the quote-unquote Mexican style was. Of course, that was the big calling card of Gennady Golovkin heading into those 2 Canelo fights. Who fights the real Mexican style? Well, Canelo obviously showed us in that rematch he can get down and dirty and dig in. But it's the efficiency, and I think, Luke, something both you and Ray touched on recently is the activity level. How much do we talk about in elite boxing and MMA when guys take a year off or they're off for 2 years due to injury? You know, it's rare that they are ever the same and they pick up where they left off. Floyd Mayweather is an alien in that regard, how he can parachute in the second half of his career every other year or whatever and still be the same. Canelo's fighting essentially 4 times a year, which just doesn't happen for superstars in this modern era. You'll see a up-and-coming stud prospect do that to get the rounds in, to get the marketing to pile up and to become a name. Canelo's got all the power, control, and leverage, yet I'm here to say he uses it for his good for the most part, and that's a plus to boxing fans because he could be fighting twice a year, once in a gimme fight, maybe once in a big-name fight. He's literally taking on, in this division, everyone with a title one after another to try to prove something. And I think, while, okay, that's good to get the respect of the old guard, yeah, us old boxing heads, it's also keeping him so sharp that, Luke, you said, I'm not sure he's ever out of training camp. I'm not sure he has the time to be out of training camp because he's always got that next fight ready, and it's remarkable.
Well, what does it tell you about? 2 sort of key things to think about. One, just overall durability in the fight game. Now, part of that a fighter has something of a choice in. Yes, they're fighting an opponent, But based on their style and obviously the fights that they take and what have you, there's a question of how much damage they take in the ring. I'm trying to think here, Brian. What would you say the two fights where he took the most amount of damage? Both Golovkin fights? Because you look at his last one, Fielding, Jacobs, Kovalev, Smith, Yildirim, Saunders. He didn't take hardly any damage in any of those.
No, that's a great point, and that is, a tribute to his efficiency, to his defensive movement. Look, I can't say it enough. People forget, when he was a junior middleweight stud and the next big thing, there were those, okay, but, he's slow, and his feet are, not quick, and you can take advantage in this one area. For him to be able to erase that critique of him and round out his game, and obviously moving up in weight carries the speed with it and all that. But his commitment to defense, we saw it looking back on his run here. Go back to the Austin Trout fight when they unified titles at 154 in 2013. That may have been the first time I saw Canelo say, okay, I'm not going to dance around you, but my upper body movement, my swiveling, my ability to duck 4 or 5 punches in a row just by turning my head, Luke, that goes a long way in one, frustrating your opponents, but two, to your point, being able to be this active. He has been the bigger puncher at 168 pounds and above, walking guys down. Maybe a Billy Joe Saunders can win a round or two by out-slicking him. Nobody hurts him. Nobody stops his forward momentum. I don't know how to explain that, Luke. I don't know how to explain this leap he has made, but at 31, everything has come together where he could do it all, and he can do it against anybody he wants in the world. And it's probably all of these characteristics piled together in one, and that's the secret sauce in Canelo. But each one of these tells a true chapter in how he got here.
One thing we haven't really discussed that is probably worth a mention while Canelo still moves around in the ring here is, I'm going to say, at least from a sporting perspective, his humility. I mean, understand something. We've been talking about the relationship that Canelo has with Eddie Reynoso. Reynoso is ordering him around the ring. I got to tell you, I've seen some training environments where it didn't necessarily look or work that way with elite fighters. For having this guy in his life as long as he did, and for all the success that Canelo has had, he still puts Eddie in a place where Eddie, at least in a professional setting, it seems, can tell him what to do. That kind of operating space is going to be a big reason why at age 31 he has been able to build himself to a relatively, or I won't say a fully complete fighter. No fighter is fully complete, but pretty dang close, Brian. It's this ability to keep your head down, keep working, work smarter, not harder, and have a guy in your life who can help direct you as you begin to just accumulate and accrue all these different experiences and all of these different skills. You need humility from a sporting perspective to do that.
Yeah, and I think that's a big part of him bouncing back from that Mayweather loss so easily, like we talked about, and all the things that he clearly learned from Floyd inside the ring that night in 2013, both business-wise and in terms of technician. Nobody, Luke, puts Eddie Reynoso in the corner except Canelo. 59 times, and they've had a great run doing so. So I agree with you.
No doubt about it. Also, getting back to something we were talking about with the defense, here's the other part. Canelo has great defense. And think about the Billy Joe Saunders thing. I talked about it previously, building offense into defense. He rolls out of the way of what Billy Joe Saunders was trying to throw, and then throws the shovel punch or the shovel hook, whatever you want to call it, that broke the face. So he's able to incorporate both. But even when opponents land on him, right? Even when they actually connect, dude, Canelo's chin is good. He takes big punches from big punchers, Golovkin, Kovalev, you name it, and has kind of walked through him. I mean, when was the last time you saw Canelo get his bell rung? I mean, really get rocked? I'm struggling to think of a single time.
Well, I mean, it's one left hook from Jose Miguel Cotto in 2011?
Okay, that was literally but that was the first time I ever saw him.
That's why it's a ridiculous joke, and Caleb Plant used that at the press conference because it's so obscure and from so long ago. Luke, he took Golovkin's best stuff for 24 rounds. I thought he avoided Golovkin's right hand in the first fight with quickness. In that second fight, when he made that decision to come forward, he took Triple G's Sunday punch. Luke, Triple G had knocked out 23 consecutive opponents until he went the distance with Danny Jacobs. Oh, by the way, he floored Danny Jacobs in that fight, the final fight before the 2-fight series against Canelo. So remarkable what I saw on both of those nights in Las Vegas just a few years back, what Canelo was able to do against Triple G. Whether you agree or believe he deserved the draw or the close win in the second fight, and you and I have rewatched those, Luke, and they really go either way. They're just great, classic, all-time fights. But about this narrative that comes around a lot of Canelo's the star, he'll get the benefit of the doubt on the scorecards. While that is sometimes historically true for stars and has gone Canelo's way for the most part, there's something about that efficient style, though, Luke, that brings that from the judges who do have the best point of view and can see that when he does land, there is major impact. And to all the things you've been saying, including how he doesn't show any damage, even when he is rocked. And I know Triple G rocked him in that second fight. You could see the power, and he just kept coming. It's hard as a judge to score against that when the rounds are close. It really can be.
I gotta say, this is why I like, frankly, Caleb Plant's approach. Dude, you're up against a guy who is just a force of nature and who's smart and who's in his... I mean, the deck is stacked against Caleb Plant in terms of what kind of an opponent he could be facing in virtually every way. And yet, he is not merely... once more into the breach, dear friends, kind of an attitude, but with a little bit of gusto, with this sort of nod to the detractors, the haters. Like, if you're going to go fight Canelo Alvarez, you're going to need to pack a lunch pail, for sure. But on top of that, man, you need to have a little bit of verve. You need to have a little bit of swag. You have to have a lot of belief because you're up against, frankly, maybe a generational challenge at this point who's hard to hit, hard to hurt, and packs a wallop at 168 pounds. Yeah, you better be confident.
No, absolutely. And I think you better go after it because you can ask yourself this. How does Caleb Plant win the majority of his biggest fights? Well, he's slick, but he's an aggressive, slick boxer. So it's punches and bunches and combinations, get in and out. But if you try to play, chess with Canelo, look, he's the pound-for-pound king for a reason. He's the ultimate chess master. It's probably going to be a close fight. Canelo's probably going to get the nod. Well, what if Caleb can get Canelo maybe off his game? What if he can try to do that and make it an emotional fight? That's got to be the card he's playing beyond just standing for him and believing in himself. But it's going to be interesting November 6th as we see Canelo continue to work the back.
Yeah, working on his head movement here, working on his timing, working on his trunk movement, his shoulder rolling, all kinds of stuff. Again, it looks to me like he's just kind of getting the paces in for the media here. Nothing too special or specific. Let's listen to the workout audio for a moment.
Todo mi Beto, iré, Ahí está el Canelo. Listo, vamos. Ánimo, tiempo. Tiempo.
No le pierdas la vista. Síguelo y te clavas. Síguelo. Eso, ahí mero. Eso, muy bien. Eso.
Timing, Nico. Timing. Timing. 10 segundos. Vámonos. Eso. Tiempo. Antes. ¿Vaya contigo, pa? Sí, póngate para acá.
We're back. Luke Thomas, Brian Campbell here at the Canelo Alvarez media workout. BC, he was working what's called a maize bag, which is good for, obviously, defensive drills, timing, that sort of a thing. They look to be on point to me.
Yeah, the champ looks ready come November 6th for this pay-per-view clash. All 4 world titles at 168 pounds. A little bit of bad blood sprinkled in, of course, from that press conference in Beverly Hills just a little bit more than a month ago. I never expected we would be at such a intensity fever pitch for this one, meaning you have so many people saying, I just want to see Canelo knock him out. Meaning, Caleb Plant has gotten under their skin if they're a Canelo backer just as much as he's attempted to do the same to Big Red, the pound-for-pound great Canelo Alvarez. So should be very interesting in a lot of ways, Luke, to see. The problem with looking at these two is, no one matches Canelo's resume, throughout this great career, nearly 60 fights. But Plant's resume at the very elite, we got a couple small sample sizes, so you have to try to pick from those. The great title win against Jose Uzcategui, where he dropped him twice in that close slugfest. Some of these more prominent opportunities when he blew away Mike Lee. I mean, you've seen a Caleb Plant that's shown you the talent, the spark, the flash. They are there. But can you raise that game to an even bigger level against somebody like Canelo Alvarez? Look, he's shown us up to this point that he's ready, meaning for the moment. Is his game, though? We can only see that November 6th because the champ is here, Luke, and he's ready to go.
He looks ready to go for sure. You're mentioning Caleb Plant and some of the bigger fights that he's had where he's had some good wins. His last win, though, not the best win of his career against Caleb Truax, 1. And 2, let's talk about the thing you mentioned about Canelo, namely his frequency of competition. Caleb Plant doesn't really have that. To what extent will that play a role?
Would I have liked him to have been a little bit more busy? Would he have probably certainly. Obviously, the pandemic took a chunk out of most in boxing in terms of their schedule in 2020. Canelo's been able to fight through that and stay very active to his credit. But look, Caleb Plant's 29 years old. He's at the peak of his physical powers here. He's going to be ready. That may not have been the audition against Caleb Truax, the former champion at 168 pounds, that we thought for Caleb Plant when he had the big spotlight national television fight. It's tough, Luke. Did Caleb Plant win that fight every round, every second? Yeah, for the most part. Was he ever in trouble? No. We just didn't come out of that fight going, oh, this guy's going to give Canelo some problems. And I think maybe that's what you would want, but also for Caleb Plant, maybe that's a little bit of a sly fox opportunity to come in here and say, okay, oh, you've seen me lately, you're not that impressed by me, let me show you in the ring.
By the way, I'm looking at this home gym and who is in there. It's a nice gym. I spy with my little eye. She's off camera now, but I just saw Esther Lynn, the great combat sports photographer for many places, but now for Showtime. I'm expecting some pretty awesome shots out of this event afterwards when she gets those uploaded. She is an enormous talent. But here we are looking at Canelo, just working some of the lower abs, just breaking a sweat is what I would describe this kind of workout as. And you can see some of the tattoos there on his forearm as well.
I mean, look, can we hold right there and talk ink on the great Campeon here? He, along with the back of his neck, he has seemed to really go after that left forearm, elbow to wrist area. And, he gets a lot of mixed reactions for getting his wife's eyes on his left forearm. You're an ink master yourself. Your thoughts on that?
Not a tattoo choice I would have personally made, but I think a lot of people could look at my tattoos and say the exact same thing. I gotta say, he has good work overall. A little hard to see here from the feed that we're watching, but you have to appreciate something. This sounds counterintuitive, but actually a lot of athletes have really bad tattoos, especially NBA athletes. They, for some reason, just go to the guy that they went to growing up despite having oodles of money. Canelo has put in actually a little bit of thought into it. All black and gray work, it appears. And yeah, I'm a fan. I like it. You?
Yeah, no doubt about it. I hope to ask Canelo what his plans are, Luke, to conclude that sleeve. It looks like he's contemplating that right now.
Yes.
Okay, I've got the eyes right here. Where else am I going to go with this? You mentioned the NBA players maybe having hit or misses. Luke, we're in the combat sports world. Very few have tattoos worth talking about. Let's be fair about that.
And now he is sitting up. I don't think that might be a full barbell. I don't think so because he has like a snatch grip on it and it's already collar to collar, which wouldn't really be possible with his size. So this is a smaller standard barbell, probably around the 25-pound mark. But doing sit-ups with that is not easy.
No.
But again, these are not strenuous workouts. These are designed for, breaking a sweat, so to speak.
This is Canelo's every day, Luke, okay?
Right.
Just taking it in for the media here as we look to this fight. Luke, also the pay-per-view full card, the main card, has been announced. We're going to get former super middleweight two-time champion Anthony Durrell, the dog, in the co-main event. He'll be taking on Marcus Hernandez. So, I wonder if that's a little potential insurance there. A very credible contender, former champion in Durrell. Should anything go wrong either way, the dog will be ready in that co-main event spot looking to let his hands go. So should be fun to see.
For now, let's hear more from the audio of the workout itself.
Manos abiertas. 12.
Sí.
Venga, 10. 3. 4. 5. Extendidito. Eso, 6. Eso, 7. 8. 9. 10. Medio. Cruzadito y va. 2, 3, ahí. 10, arriba, va. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. ¡Ah! ¡Oh! Levantes tanto, un poquito nomás. Ahí, eso.
¿Así?
Así. 5,
7, 8, 9, 10. Lo dejas adelante, pura pierna. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. ¡Ah! 10. Vamos, juntos ahora. 1, eso. 2, vamos. 3, 4, bien. 5, 6, 7, vamos. 8, 9, 10. Una vuelta más ahora ya. Cabeza atrás. 10, 11, 12, vamos. 2, 3, cabeza atrás. Vamos, vamos. 8, 9, 10, 12, vamos. 1, 2, atrás, 3, 4, 5, 9, 10, 11, 12. Killer, el killer. Vamos,
Ay, güey, pinche killer. Killer. ¿Me da agua de perdida? ¿Algo?
Perdón.
Dame gasolina, algo, todo.
Voy a presentar al que hizo el video.
Pero no le quité la marca, ¿cierto?
Venga, Saúl, la piernas extendida. Y arriba. Extendiditas cerradas. Eso. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, medio, vamos. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9, 10, arriba. 1, 2, 3, arriba. 4, arriba. 7, 8, 9, 10. Aquí es solo donde le puedo hablar así a Saúl.
Aquí en el póker, ¿verdad?
Así me va.
No, en el póker le pongo una chinga ganándole. ¿Verdad, Thor?
Sí. Vamos, cortito, vamos. 1, 2, 3.
¿Así,
4,
Thor?
así. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Dos más.
¿Qué pedo? ¿Qué pedo?
4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Venga, Saúl, vamos. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, vamos. 8, 9, 10.
A ver, mi güero, despídase porque ya van a... Gracias a todos los que se conectaron. Sé que muchos, la mayoría están trabajando ahorita, así como yo. Pero gracias a los que se tomaron su tiempo de estar aquí presenciando mi entrenamiento. Saludos a todos. Nos vemos el 6 de noviembre. Muchas gracias, amigos. Ahí está el Munir.
Gracias.
Saúl y todo el equipo. Diablito. Saludos, amigos.
There we are. We're back. Luke Thomas, Brian Campbell. We're here in the San Diego for the media workout for Canelo Alvarez. And it looks like he just about has wrapped up here, Brian. And we're about to get started with him. Any takeaways from what we saw? Seemed pretty standard.
Yeah, pretty standard across the board. Ready for action, all business, but in a good way, in a fun and jovial way. And we're going to see it play out November 6th. A very intriguing fight. History will be made. All 4 super middleweight world titles. Get a chance to talk to Canelo very shortly, Luke.
And we are supposed to be interviewing Canelo Alvarez here in a moment or two. I believe he is getting ready. I'm excited. BC, it's only 17 days away, but the uniqueness of this fight, the uniqueness of the moment, the unprecedented, frankly, opportunity here at 168, I'm fired up. I'm super fired up. You were talking about the rest of that card. Fine, good card. I'm not here to hate on it, but it's that main event. Wow. I'm all in. Chips at the middle, Vegas style.
Vegas is the proper venue for this, the MGM Grand Garden Arena there November 6th, Showtime pay-per-view. An interesting challenge as far as Canelo's recent ones go, and obviously, as we've talked about, building up a lot, crossing over into the emotional, into the bad blood in ways I never would have expected with these two. But why not ask the champ himself, Luke?
All right, we go now to San Diego. I believe Canelo Alvarez is standing by. Yes, hi Canelo, how are you? Luke Thomas, Brian Campbell here from Showtime. First question for you would be this. What does Caleb Plant... He can't hear? I believe that Canelo cannot hear just yet. All right, let me know when he can hear, and we'll go back to him. BC, I'm going to ask him about the particular challenges that a guy like Caleb Plant presents. We can talk about it. You can talk about it. We can discuss it, but it only really matters from his perspective. That's really what I care about. Okay, I think we have him back now. Canelo, how are you doing? Luke Thomas, Brian Campbell from Showtime. First question for you. When you size up Caleb Plant as an opponent, what does he do differently, if anything, than other opponents you've had?
They still can't hear, guys. We're working on some technical issues and stuff. We're working on some things.
No worries. We will go back. We'll try it again when he is ready. Anyway, Brian, that's sort of what's on my mind here a little bit. I always want to ask the fighter what they see. What is it that you as the fighter size up as the operative things? Because sometimes they'll tell you exactly what you think they might, and a lot of times they go in a totally different direction that kind of wakes you up a little bit to, oh, maybe their mind's someplace else. I'm sure you've experienced something similar to that.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Look, we can only see from the outside looking in. These guys are on the inside, and I think Canelo is ready. So let's go back to Ray Flores with Canelo, Luke.
All right, third time's the charm. Here we go. Canelo, hi, Canelo. It's Luke Thomas and Brian Campbell here from Showtime. First question for you. When you size up Caleb Plant as an opponent, what does he do differently, if anything, than other opponents you've had?
No, nothing different. Nothing different. It's nothing new for me. I fought with all the styles. So he brings he's a champion, of course. He's undefeated. He have the other belt, so that's why.
When you examine your relationship with Eddie Reynoso, why does it work so well? What is the secret to your partnership?
Discipline. Discipline. That's the secret.
Go ahead, BC.
Canelo, a lot of people obviously still buzzing from you and Caleb Plant pushing, trading punches at the press conference back on September 22nd. Is that a good or bad thing for the promotion of this fight, in your opinion?
I don't know. I really don't know. I never involved in this kind of thing, so if it helps, good. If no, it's good for me. I just want to be undisputed.
You know, as it pertains to the fight, it looked like he got under your skin a little bit Could any of that play into what we'll see on November 6th? Has that made you more willing to want to deliver the knockout punch?
No, of course. Like I say, I'm gonna win by knockout, and my mind is so strong. I'm gonna use it in my favor.
Canelo, you admit that Caleb is a champion, but he's not seen the bright lights in the way that you have. Do you think that that might play a role when you guys eventually meet on November 6th, the overwhelming state of a big fight?
La experiencia peleando los grandes espectáculos que has peleado, no ha sido en esa.
Yeah, I've been in there a lot of times. So for him, it's gonna be a little hard. The first time in a big event is gonna be a little bit weird for him.
Canelo, do you feel like that you, with your totally complete skill set or pretty near complete skill set, with you moving up in weight, are you redefining what it means to be the Mexican boxer?
Estás cambiando cómo ser, cómo es un boxeo completo, más diferente de los mexicanos peleadores antes de ti.
No, creo que yo tengo mi estilo, tengo la escuela de Eddie Reynoso. Desde niño me ha entrenado, tengo la escuela, puedo hacer muchísimas cosas, puedo moverme, puedo mover la cintura, puedo atacar sin que me golpeen, puedo defenderme, puedo atacar, puedo hacer muchísimas cosas y creo que eso es un boxeo completo, ¿no? Porque en algunas peleas tú necesitas hacerlo y tienes las armas para hacerlo, en otras necesitas ir hacia adelante, tienes las armas para hacerlo, en otras tienes que moverte un poco más, tienes las armas para hacerlo. Creo que tengo un boxeo completo y eso tengo la escuela de Eddie Reynoso.
I'm a complete fighter. I come from the school of Eddie Reynoso. I can go ahead and do various things. Listen, at the end of the day, you know, I can be aggressive, I can attack, I can counter, I can move. I have, you know, quality movement. But at the end of the day, I know I have to be a complete fighter, and I come from the school of Eddie Reynoso, which is why you see it in my game time and time again.
Canelo, what does Caleb Plant do well in your eyes?
No, he's a good boxer. He have a good jab. He moves really well. But like I said before, it's nothing new for me. So I'm gonna do my things. I'm gonna put my experience, my boxing skills, and win the fight.
Canelo, if you win, you're the first undisputed champion at super middleweight. You're constantly making history, trying to do more. What goals remain for you at age 31 for the rest of your career?
No, he hecho muchas cosas en el boxeo, gracias a Dios. Esta creo que va a ser una de las más importantes en mi carrera, por eso estoy muy motivado y va a ser muy importante para mi país, para México. Creo que va a ser muy importante el ser campeón indiscutido.
This is very important for my country of Mexico. This is important for me to be undisputed. This is one of the most important fights of my life, to go out there and capture the undisputed championship. So I'm taking it very seriously, and it means a lot to me.
Would a win over Caleb Plant make you the best Mexican boxer of all time?
No, I don't want to say that. I just want to make my own history, and that's it. We have a lot of good fighters before and present, so I just wanna be one of the best.
Well, Canelo, we really appreciate your time. We look forward to November 6th. Thank you for letting us into your workout, and we appreciate your time.
No, thank you guys. See you soon.
All right, there he is, Canelo Alvarez with Ray Flores, the potentially soon-to-be undisputed champion at 168 pounds. He's all business, Brian. That's what I took away from that. Not a lot of extraneous comments. He's really focused on what he's talking about, on what he's doing, and that's it.
Well, he's not lingering on what happened, Luke, in the press conference a little more than a month ago. It's back to business. You saw that today in the gym, and you sort of see that in the way he looks at this. This is my challenge for now, taking it serious, but I come in there to do one thing, and that's finish this fight. So it's going to be interesting theater November 6th. Good sort of close-up today inside what makes Canelo, for a guy who can be very polite but short to the point. And we got a nice little chance to see what goes into his championship journey.
One thing I would note here before we wrap, Brian, I would just say you got a taste of what makes him great there, right? On the one hand, He's supremely confident in his chances against Caleb Plant. On the other hand, not even ready to approach the conversation about who is the best Mexican boxer of all time. Going to put that out for a later date. He knows he still has work to do, or at least believes he has work to do. And it's that humility with that confidence, the two together. It's a pretty potent combination. That's Brian Campbell. I'm Luke Thomas. We are the hosts of Morning Combat. It's a regular show we do Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 11 a.m. in the East, live. Every week that we do it, we talk about boxing, we talk about MMA, and it's a one-stop shop. Brian, what else can we say about Morning Combat other than it's the best show on earth?
You know, it's the best show on earth. But you know, Luke, what is another great show, and obviously we'll have you covered all the way until Fight Week, November 6th, Las Vegas for Canelo Plant. You know, it's another great show that can get you fired up, Luke. How about Showtime All Access and the 3-part series, which includes the After the Fight epilogue, debuts Friday night, October 22nd, 10:30 p.m. Eastern on Showtime. So you'll get an even deeper look at the training camps, the family life of both, as these two super middleweights come together in the summit. But yes, Luke, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern. Check out what we're doing at MK. Getting that road ready for all things Canelo Plant and what's going on around the world of boxing, mixed martial arts, and beyond.
And we will be there in Las Vegas for Fight Week, so stay tuned. We appreciate everyone who watched today. Thank you for Team Canelo for letting us in and giving us a peek into what his day in preparation for that big November 6th date looks like. For Brian Campbell, I'm Luke Thomas. Thanks to everyone who watched. Thanks to Showtime. And until next time, enjoy the fights.
For the very first Super Middleweight Undisputed World Championship, it's Canelo Alvarez versus Caleb Plant.
November 6th, you will hear the words, and the new Undisputed Super Middleweight, and still undefeated. You think that's funny? Yeah? You keep laughing, motherfucker, because you know when you're going to find out? Real soon.
I just gonna say something. You're not on my level, and you will see. I promise you.
They have this very aggressive face-off that leads to blows.
And I love that Caleb Plant is going after him.
See you November 6th. You wanna see something special.
I haven't seen anyone this confident come at Canelo.
I'm gonna knock out this guy. Less than 8 rounds. Easy.